In just 12 hours, the Middle East was pushed to the brink of total war after the death of Iran's supreme leader. Missiles were launched, a U.S. aircraft carrier was targeted, and threats of overwhelming retaliation echoed across capitals. This is no longer a regional standoff. It is a stress test for the global order itself. The chain reaction began when news of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's death spread through Tehran, shaking the foundations of Iran's political and religious system. At the same time, reports confirmed that a former Iranian president was killed in intense Israeli airstrikes. Moscow quickly sent condolences, condemning the assassination as a violation of international law. Pyongyang denounced the attacks as unlawful aggression, openly aligning itself with Tehran. But inside Iran, the most explosive consequence was not diplomatic, it was spiritual and institutional. A senior cleric declared a jihad, transforming military retaliation into a sacred obligation. When such a decree is issued, it does not merely mobilize soldiers, it activates proxy networks across the region. An interim leadership council was formed, pledging to continue the hardline path set by the late leader. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps immediately launched new phases of its military campaign. The most shocking claim, for ballistic missiles were fired toward the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier. Simultaneously, Iran announced the battlefield use of a hypersonic missile, challenging even the most advanced interception systems. The question now is no longer who is right or wrong, but whether the cycle of retaliation has crossed the point of no return. The first explosions were reported not only in Israel, but across the Gulf, widening the battlefield within hours. Blasts were recorded near Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and Manama, signaling a strategy far beyond symbolic retaliation. Iran was not just targeting enemies, it was targeting the infrastructure that sustains American power projection. In Qatar and Bahrain, injuries were reported as drones and projectiles struck near critical facilities. The message was clear: any nation hosting U.S. bases could become a frontline state overnight. Meanwhile, Israel's multi-layered air defense system faced one of its most intense stress tests in history. In a wave targeting more than 24 locations, at least one missile penetrated defenses and hit a populated area. Casualties mounted, buildings collapsed, and sirens echoed continuously across major cities. Yet Israel responded with overwhelming force, claiming it had destroyed large portions of Iran's air defenses. Israeli officials also stated that dozens of senior Iranian commanders were eliminated in precision strikes. In a bold operation, Israeli aircraft reportedly struck an airbase, destroying fighter jets before takeoff. Over Tehran, fighter aircraft continued patrols, signaling sustained air superiority, at least for now. On the political front, Iranian leaders declared that the United States and Israel had crossed the final red line. In response, President Donald Trump warned that any larger-scale retaliation would trigger unprecedented American force. What began as targeted strikes was rapidly evolving into a multi-front confrontation with no clear off-ramp. Within the first 12 hours alone, U.S. forces reportedly launched nearly 900 strikes across Iranian territory. Bombers, naval vessels, and armed drones operated in coordination to paralyze air defenses and command nodes. It was designed as a shock campaign, overwhelming speed, overwhelming volume, overwhelming force. But Tehran responded almost immediately, firing roughly 300 missiles in retaliation. Intelligence estimates suggest Iran still holds thousands of short and medium-range missiles in reserve. Key U.S. facilities in Bahrain and other Gulf states were placed on maximum alert as radar and storage sites were targeted. Washington insisted contingency systems were activated, yet the vulnerability of regional bases was unmistakable. President Trump framed the offensive as the inevitable outcome of failed nuclear negotiations. He argued that military force was the final option to eliminate a growing strategic threat. Tehran countered with a defiant message. Its missile capability remains intact and ready for a prolonged war of attrition. The final recorded speeches of Iran's supreme leader began circulating domestically, reinforcing the doctrine of deterrence. He had warned that a nation without defensive power would be crushed by its adversaries. Iranian officials declared that assassinating a religious authority of such stature would ignite outrage across the Muslim world. Ultimatums were reportedly sent to neighboring Arab states demanding the closure of U.S. bases on their soil. The world now watches a confrontation that could redefine political legacies, regional balance, and perhaps the boundaries of global war itself.